In lesson 9.2, we relate hundredths and decimals. So in the last lesson, we related tenths and decimals. This lesson, we are going to go one step further to the right and relate hundredths to decimals. So in 2008 Summer Olympic Games, the winning time in the men's 100-meter butterfly race was only 1/100th second faster than the second place time. What decimal represents this fraction of a second? So we know we can write hundredths as fractions or as decimals. So again, first they want us to use a model and a place value chart to show 1/100th. So we have to shade 1/100th. We know that this box has 100 pieces, so we just need to shade one of those. Each part of this model represents 1/100th, and if we were to write that as a fraction, it's 1/100. And if we were to read it and write it in words, it'd be 100th. Notice the DTH there. Then if we move over to writing it as a decimal, we have no whole number here in front of our fraction, so we know that this has to be a 0. Then we have our decimal place, and we know there's 1/100th, so we know that the 1 has to go in the hundredths place, but since we don't have a number to put in the tens place, we put a 0 there. So if we were to write this as a decimal, it would look like 0.01. We also read this as 1/100th because we have a 1 in the hundredths place. Another way to figure this problem out is to use a number line. So it says label the number line with the equivalent decimals, locate the point 1/100th. So they actually located the point 1/100th for us, and it is right here where these two blue arrows are pointing. So first let's go ahead and label what we are going to write for our decimals that are equivalent to the fraction shown. So if we have 0/100ths, it's 0.00. 10/100ths is 0.10. 20/100ths is 0.20. So that means 30/100ths is going to be 0.30. And 40 is going to be 0.40. And 50/100ths, 0.50. 60/100ths, 0.60. 70/100ths is 0.70. 80/100ths is 0.80. And 90/100ths is 0.90. Then when we get to 100/100ths, we know that is the same as 1, and if we were going to write it as a decimal to the hundredths place, we would write 1.00. So here we have 1/100th because each of these is divided into 10 equal parts. So if we were starting at 0, the next one to the right would be 1/100th, and as a decimal, that is written 0.01. So the winning time was 0.01 seconds faster. In number 1, we are asked to shade the model to show 31/100th and then write the same amount as a decimal. So if we were going to shade 31/100ths, I am just going to shade 3 full tens columns, and then 1 in the next one. So here I have 31/100ths. And they already have it written as a fraction. We have to figure out how to write this as a decimal. So in the fraction 31/100ths, we know that we have no whole numbers, so 0. Here's our decimal. 31/100ths. Now we can't write 31 all in this same hundredths box. So here is where the 3 would go in the tens and the 1 would go in the hundredths. So the decimal for 31/100ths is 0.31. In number 2, it wants us to write the fraction or the mixed number and the decimal shown by the model. So in this model, we can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whole rows plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Which gives us 68/100. 68/100ths as a decimal, we have 0 wholes, and then 68, and we are in the hundredths place. Now we are supposed to look at this point on the number line to figure out what fraction is shown. So if we have 6 and 0 hundredths, which is equal to 6.00, we know, and then if this is 6 and 50 hundredths, we know that it goes up by 10 hundredths each time. So we have our whole number 6 and 10 hundredths for this first mark. Then we have 6 and 20 hundredths for this mark. Well, the dot that we are looking for is one space less than 6 and 20 hundredths. 1 less than 20 is 19. So that is at 6 and 19 hundredths. If we were to write this as a decimal, 6 is our whole number, so it has to go to the left of the decimal point. And then we had 19, and we are to the hundredths place, 6 and 19 hundredths. Now if we go down to number 8 here, we are supposed to write the fraction or the mixed number as a decimal. So if you were to write 9 hundredths, we'd write 0 point. Now we know that 9 needs to be in the hundredths place, so we have to put 0 as our placeholder. 4 and 55 100ths is 4.55. This 55 gives us to our hundredths place. 10 hundredths, 0.10. 9 and 33 hundredths is 9.33. We are at our hundredths place. We are in 33 hundredths. For number 14, our directions are to shade the grids to show 3 different ways to represent 16 hundredths using models. So if we were thinking about 16 hundredths, one way we could shade it is one full row of 10, and then 6 in the next row. That's one way. Or we could shade 4 in this corner, and 4 in the bottom left, and 4 in the bottom right, and 4 in the top right. I still have 16 out of my 100 boxes shaded. It just wants us to think of 3 different ways. So then I could go, so for the third one I could shade 8 across, and then I could choose to shade 8 up and down. It doesn't matter how you shade these ones as long as you have 16 of the 100 boxes shaded. And if we were to write 16 hundredths in a decimal, it would be 0.16 because we have 16 and we are now in the hundredths place, 16 hundredths. And last but not least, number 16, the directions are to shade the model to show 1 and 24 hundredths, then write the mixed number in decimal form. So if we're going to shade this model to show 1 and 24 hundredths, we are going to shade 1 full hundredths box, and then we are going to shade an extra 24. Okay, a little over that. And then if we were to write 1 and 24 hundredths as a decimal, we have 1 whole, and then we have 24 out of our 100 shaded. 1 and 24 hundredths.